my gosh, whatever. No, preserving the restoration. And again, we can still, that still will potentially be in the scriptures anyway, would be my guess. But if we can, I'm not advocating for this, I'm bringing this up. If we already voted on the revelations, the blog posts, the stuff that's already given to us as revelation and work on Women's Council, and this document is doing nothing more than making that general information specific, and therefore it is nothing more than or less than what is, it's probably less because I couldn't be that thorough. If it is nothing more than that document, have we already voted on it? Okay, now, Kalisa. Okay. Okay. So if I just tell him to say, "Thus saith the Lord," it'll be fine? Just kidding. Okay, I think that's true. And so I think much like was described with Sarah, someone described Sarah's document as a living document. I think that was you, Maren. Like it's just going to keep adding new information. And again, it's a good point, and obviously maybe not something that's going to be dealt with here, obviously. And I'm not advocating for that specific, that general to specific being voted on specifically. I'm just saying that was brought up to me by one of the tables. And someone also said it needs a name. The document needs a name. And I said it has a name. Can we vote on this quickly? No. Okay. I don't know. It doesn't have a name. It really. Can we? Yeah. Can we vote on these things quickly or easily? That's what I named it. And believe me, I woke up in the middle of the night thinking, oh my gosh, she's going to put that on their tables, and it's going to say that at the top of it, and then they're going to think, what is this? So, Cammie, I didn't mean to take over. Cammie.
No, I appreciate it. This is how it's supposed to.
Okay, Cammie, okay, I can only hear Cammie, except that I can't.
Okay, so did we already accept the answer on forgiveness and the June 20th revelation? Those are already accepted.
I think those were included, yes.
Okay.
Yes, okay. Anything else for me? I just keep coming up here and co-opting Wendy's stuff. Maren first, then Kalisa.
So are we considering your document then to be guiding principles to us to use and not law? Like how binding are we?
Okay, I'm just going to say this one thing again because I don't know the answer to that. I took Sarah's document, took all my notes, I took the revelations, I took all of your emails. I realized what some of the issues were in terms of how the general was not made specific. I created this document that makes the general specific. I was saying to people, I don't care if you print it on cards and laminate them and carry them in your wallet. I don't care if you throw it away. I think what you're doing, whether you vote on this in any specific way or not, is you're just walking away from here with specifics to do the Lord's work in general. Does that make sense? Now, Wendy can operate the voting kind of thing after you guys have all spoken to decide how you want to vote on this and what that will ultimately end up to be. Okay, Kalisa.
I think I need to explain it better. I think restricting what we have to revelation specifically from God and not including blog posts that have like thoughts and opinions from Denver is really important. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
That could explode into something that isn't objective.
Oh, okay. So, are you... Yes. I'm trying to even recap what you just said. Stand up and say it really loud, so I'm not... No, really louder, Kalisa.
So I'm saying that I'm proposing that we restrict what it is that we're considering as what we view as we need to keep things objective. We need to keep things objective, and I think it would be best if we kept it to specific revelations from God and scriptures, and not include things from the blog that may be thoughts and opinions that belong to Denver, because I think it'll explode things into no longer being able to decipher what's objective and what's subjective.
Okay, so the only blog post that falls outside of the actual, like, the only blog post that doesn't actually have the title Women's Council in it, I believe is the one on forgiveness. Am I right?
That was a revelation.
Okay, all right, I agree with you. Now, so the document that Sarah had, which includes some blog posts.
Only the 2 revelations.
Okay, so the 2 revelations. So that's it. The document that I made from Sarah's is single space, back, front, outline format, 1 full page, 1 half page. And it has been asked that I provide that for you, because all I did was take the relevant things and put them, again, in a simplified form. So that can also be on the thing. So we are only voting on the Revelation blogs. Is that good? Is that a good word? Is that what I'm talking about? See, again, you guys have a totally different relationship with this material than I do. I didn't even know what you were talking about until I read them like 2 days ago. So, scriptures, Revelation blog posts. We already voted that passing, oh my gosh, preserving the restoration material can be in there, and then we can, implement that later. Are we voting on making the specific, the general specific? And how you decide to identify that is totally up to the vote of the women. Was there another hand? Jacqueline?
Yes, I have a request. If you're going to vote in a revelation from the blog post, my request is to put the entire revelation in and not the piece of it.
No, the big whole thing, you mean from the June 20th, it's a big old thing.
I know what it is. The whole thing freaking pissed.
No, I'm talking about the forgiveness one.
Oh, the
Oh,
forgiveness.
yeah, I don't, yeah.
Text is really.
Sure, that's fine with me. Yeah. Yes, Cammie?
So I just wanted to clarify another thing, I guess. So we are, the website that Wendy has created, we're going to continue using that, and these proceedings are going to go on there? Are we putting these documents on there? Are we creating a database of useful themes? Where does this go?
That's a good question. I don't know. We haven't voted on it.
Very good. What a great question. I have absolutely no idea. Now, what I would recommend that you all do is if these documents are important to you in any way, go home and print them out. Okay, that's the first thing. They're available for you to print out so that you can have them. That way, I don't know what's going to happen to the website. It's on my website. Okay,
We'll leave it up as long as
yeah.
we can.
All right, I am now going, I don't even remember why I was up here.
Okay, let's have tables come up, spokeswomen from each table. 5 minutes max. If you take less than 5 minutes, that is completely fine. And why don't we just, since you've got numbers on your tables, are there people residing? It feels like residing at this point, right? Are there people who are at table 1? I can't see the numbers from here. Okay, table 1, are you ready to come up first? And we'll just go 1, 2, and so forth.
This allows the camera to pick.
Is it a microphone?
It's like a microphone for the camera.
Okay.
Okay, I guess I will get this started. First of all, I just want to tell you that I've really enjoyed being with all of you, and I think we were all a little bit apprehensive about coming to this because of wounds, past wounds, hard feelings, difficult things that we've gone through together as women as we try to fulfill this kind of hard responsibility we've been given. But I feel love from each of you, and I feel good energy in the room, and I hope the Lord is pleased with us. It's been a positive experience for me. So I'd just like to thank Wendy and Lacey and Stephanie for all your work. So, okay, our table, we discussed first Stephanie's document. I don't know what we're calling it. Stephanie's guidelines. Stephanie's no Stephanie in the name. We'll figure that out. So we thought it might be a good experiment to use it and try it for a little while, 6 months to a year, and see how it goes. is there any harm in that? I don't think so. And as she started reading it, and I was just listening to all these good points she was making, I was thinking, this would have prevented this, and that would have prevented that. And there is a lot of wisdom in this, and I do believe that it is a gift from God. But if we still have the autonomy as women's councils to come together and maybe pick and choose a little bit, I think that gives us the freedom that we need. And the states' rights versus the federal government, well, that still gives us our states' rights. So that is what our table came up with, to use this as an experiment for 6 months to a year. We're open and kind of see how it goes. But I especially like how it will prevent fallout and the aftermath that seems to always accompany women's councils. Because we can't be accused of not doing this, or you did this wrong, and procedure, and mistrial, and all of that. So, okay, if we were to maybe change something, this is on the second page. It's where it says men can be witnesses for or against. That is their only role. So, because of past experiences, sometimes there is fear or the women have fear being on these councils because they've seen actions by the men that make them fear being in their presence. Are they going to be called names? Or is there going to be an outrage of anger, or maybe even attempts at physical harm or something? In those cases, I think that it would be just fine to have our husbands come as a safety net for the women to protect them. I even went as far and to say that, well, I kind of enjoyed having my husband on a council, just having him present, and I think he made a comment or two, and it was fine with me, but our whole council was fine with that. And I certainly don't want the men taking over in any way, because these are women's councils, but if we can have some, if we as women can choose as a council how things will be run, then things will just be open. But I like the idea of husbands being there when safety is an issue. So that would be one change. Also, just the next point after that, it's C. It says, when chosen and convened, disclose the names of the women on the council. That's been another problem where women have been fearful to have their names out there because they're afraid of other women getting angry and coming after them after the council, or their names being just, rolled through the mud, or because they were on a council. So I think it's just important that we love each other and we try to be kind to each other. And I think as we're sitting here together talking about these hard things and these issues, that it creates a kindness and a bond between us that maybe we didn't have. So maybe that kindness will persist. And I think, is that all, women? Okay, that's what we have. Thanks. All right, so table 2 over there. So I actually really appreciate having the opportunity to meet and talk with more of you women intimately. And I feel like being able to have a conference where we raise our voice is directly coming from the Council of We All Have a Voice from the last conference. So I feel like this is a great exercise of speaking what we think. So thank you for hosting this. Wendy and Lacey, it's not been easy, and I'm just really grateful for you guys. Anyways, really quick, we just had a couple of things in the wording that our table saw. And the first is, we like to strike out, I left the paper there. And the first point for home, did I leave it on the table?
Yeah, general.
Yeah, so we just want to cross out general conference and just say conferences. Is that cool? That's just one of our big things. Because it could be a regional conference. It doesn't have to be a big general conference, we feel like. And then the other thing is that when an accusation is being made, that we need to have, when it's brought to the council, that the witnesses bring just this, like, the accusation right away, instead of all the backstory in front of before the council's convened. Like, let's save that for the trial, right? Instead of bring all the information beforehand, it would be nice to have that information in a closed environment instead of spreading other places. So that's what we have.
Thank you.
We don't have that much either. I do want to say, just really quickly, since I'm so vocal up here, and that Stephanie came over to our table, and that she did persuade, even though she was only supposed to reason. But that's because we asked her questions, and I really grilled her down. Because I really, really just wanted to say that for me, it was very, very strong, which I think every one of us would feel like what I'm about ready to say. I only want to do what God wants to have done. That's all I care about. And I don't want to be guilty of idolatry. I want to do His will. And so I came with the feeling, after doing my own research, of feeling like we're going to be like the children of Israel who aren't rising up, and we're asking for a lesser law. We're asking for every detail to be given to us, and so forth and so on. So I really grilled Stephanie down, and I came to peace in my heart. So I'm going to cry. I came feeling God had asked me to do something. I'm grateful to have the experience to show to myself that I will not use God's name in vain, that I will not be so determined in what I think that is right that I won't listen. I'm thankful for the opportunity to, in front of all of you, to have that experience of being more humble. But I want you to know I was born out of trying to do what I believe God wanted me to do. But I have the confidence today to be able to say I am comfortable with the answers that I grilled Stephanie on, to be able to concede my position, or whatever. So some of you I was talking pretty strongly with. Somebody didn't know I'm Michelle's sister-in-law, so Michelle Jensen and I are sister-in-law. So anyway, they're like, oh, you guys were talking. Anyway, so I just want to share that I'm grateful that Stephanie went around and allowed us to do that, and for me to come to peace with being able to support the document, and knowing that it is a gift from God and that we are not offending Him if we agree to try this. And I liked what Tasha said, even though we didn't talk about it at the table, but Q did bring up at one point that, we could do things, and if we decided it didn't work, change our mind on it. And I think that's what Tasha was kind of saying with, let's try this for a year or whatever and see, did it work? Did it help? Did it remove the disputations? So the only things that we have to add, correct me if I'm wrong, table 3, we noticed that on number 4, did somebody already say this? When she's talking about petitioning for the return of a certificate, she asked the question, who can petition? It's our understanding that the Lord just clearly says the man can petition whenever he wants. So we're just assuming that's just the man. The man can petition and nobody else petitions on his behalf. And then we did bring up on number 3 where she was talking about websites. We said the archives exist also. I know we haven't talked about using this website still, but there's also the archives that even men could see, you know, because this is relevant to them too. They might want to be interested to know, has a certain man had anything happen or whatever as he comes to a fellowship or whatever. And then the other thing was on number 6, down under B1. This was brought up when we were discussing, and Stephanie, this was about every effort should be made to have the accuser face to face with the accused. And somebody said, well, what if it's a child? And Stephanie said, well, use, you know, common sense. We just wondered if maybe you changed the wording and said something like, when appropriate, effort should be made to have the accuser face to face with accused. So that when appropriate would leave that clearly open that there are instances where it would be inappropriate. So we just had that as a suggestion on wording, and I think that was it. Did I forget anything? Okay, thanks.
Okay, so one of the things our group thought about is that in the Constitution, one of the things that they did is they took a lot of time to consider things before they went ahead with it, and how that's prevented a lot of problems. And so our group feels like we need more time to consider all the things we've heard today, and that it's not wise to necessarily move forward quickly. And so this is also one of the things I have observed from women's councils, is that a lot of the times it's better to take a step back and to think things through very carefully. And I've noticed a lot of damage comes when people just do what they think is right in the moment. And I've also noticed that with my life, that if I don't sometimes it even takes me years to figure out difficult topics. And so our group is just suggesting that we take time to decide these matters and not just one day. So I have a scripture also that kind of talks about the importance of being wise and careful and slow in how you go about things. So it says, only time, experience, careful, ponderous, and solemn thoughts can find, it's talking about the things of God, but you guys already know the scripture, can find them out, provided, of course, that there is a real desire to know the things of God accompanied by obedience to His commandments. And I think that just shows that I think women's councils are very important, and I think it's important that we not just think about how we perceive scriptures or how we, our ideas of it, because I perceive that there's a lot of ideas to that. I'm like, I'm kind of convinced of that. And I need more time to make sure my decision is something I feel good about. So that's our group.
I don't know why I was asked to do this because I'm not a good public speaker, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to be with all of you. I don't know how this goes in here. I really appreciate the discussion that our table had, and we agree with everything that's been said so far. I'm sure all of you have done the same thing. I appreciate everybody that works so hard to make all these events possible. And so as I was prepared to come to this, like the rest of you, I fasted and prayed that I would be able to contribute something towards Zion, that I could be a more useful part of this, and that clarity would come to not only me, but to all of you. And when Stephanie presented the document, this morning, to me it was an answer to prayer. I felt like it just clarified everything we've already been given, everything we already voted to the affirmative on. And so I was super grateful for that, and I'm grateful for the opportunity that we had to talk about it on our discussion. We're told that as time goes on, because this is a living, growing gospel, that we'll be given commandments, not a few. And sometimes because of our former backgrounds or our hurts, we look at commandments as laws that are restrictive, and in actuality, they're given to us from a loving Heavenly Father that wants to help us and free us. And that's how I feel about this document. I feel like it just gave us the clarity to be able to move forward and to grow, and it was an answer to the servant's prayer for us, to be able to hear God's voice clearer and louder. And that's what this document has done for me, and I think the people at our table are all in consensus with that. So I appreciate Rachel, because I'm the type that tends to move too quickly most of the time. And I'm grateful for the time that we've had to reflect on this. And just because we vote on the affirmative doesn't exclude that. We'll still be able to reflect on it and to grow and to add. And I don't think it restricts us in any way, so we shouldn't be afraid of it. We should be grateful for it.
What number table are we on? 6. That's 6. Yeah. I didn't know I was thinking.
I'd like to say we solved all the problems at our table, but we did not. We only kind of got through the beginning of the document. And we had great discussion. We did want a touch of clarification though, because in 2C it says, when chosen and convened, disclose the name of the women on the council. And we've been interpreting that as in the beginning. Is that after the whole council's done, it's disclosed and it's available?
That's a good question, and Stephanie is not in here.
Yeah, no, I'm right here. Okay, read it again.
When chosen and convened, disclose the names of the women on the council.
Okay, convened just means you're starting it.
Okay.
So, I mean, if it takes you a few weeks to get the council put together because you're, looking for women, or, haven't decided on this, that, or the other thing, or waiting for someone to commit or something, you don't have to do anything until you've got the whole group convened. Then disclose.
Then disclose.
Then
Okay.
disclose. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
But we had one other thing, and it was just an issue that we saw. It was, and it was all about the home fellowship and general conferences, because many women don't have 12 women, let alone enough women to hold a conference, and that seems to be a problem across many, many fellowships. So that's like de facto saying that all of these must happen at general conferences.
Yes. Now, I am a little bit gun shy to suggest anything to this group of women who are going to say, but you're contradicting something you said an hour and a half ago, which may or may not be true. But I have another page of stuff in my binder that says other things to consider. Other things to consider includes having a bank of women who are willing, right? Now, they may not be directly fellowshipping. I mean, there may be a lot of things they are not, okay? But what they are, if they agree to be in this pool of women, is willing, okay? So that could be another way of gathering women for a council. And I'm not going to split hairs with y'all about what it all means. It's just an idea. Because I agree with you, Maren, that is very hard to get 12 women, especially in a fellowship. And this is so hard. This is so hard. So that would be my only, and it is it's my pure opinion. There's nothing in the guidance about it at all. It was actually not even my idea. But it felt like it is an option if the women were interested in having something like that. So, because I
Thank
agree
you.
with you, yeah.
We also talked a lot about what Tasha talked about of just maybe tabling a vote on this so we could put it into a trial run. Although we could vote in, do we agree to doing that, or do we vote to agree to use these as guidelines for the future?
Do we have table 7? No table 7? Is no one sitting there? Table 8? Oh, you are 7, okay, yeah.
So our main consensus was also that we would probably do well to set this on a shelf and try it for 6 months, a year, vote on it again, maybe at a different conference, but to try it, and that would give us time to read through it more thoroughly and apply some of it and see, where the kinks are that need to be worked out. So sounds like maybe that can be voted on too, that we just vote later or something like that. That's kind of what we wanted to do. A couple of things that we talked about though is that, like Karen said, we all just want to do God's will, really, in our hearts. That is, I think we can assume, all of us do want to do what God would have us do. And so there was some question of, are we being commanded in all things again? When are we going to rise up and govern ourselves? And so that was debated. And we kind of, we're here, Zion is here, and there's this space in between where we have to still figure it out. And so this document seems to be a good structured way that we can kind of work through the differences, because, with Zion, everything that we know here is from a telestial level. All of our systems, all the way we do our stuff is telestial. We don't really know what Zion's going to be like. We don't know how it's going to be structured. We don't know what the systems we don't know what it's going to be like. It's totally foreign to this world. And so we need to have an open mind, I guess, to the idea that maybe things are going to be done totally different than what we're used to be doing here. And part of that is that this whole thing with councils was turned over to women by the Lord. And women have certain abilities, rights, access to God in a different way than men do. And we have gifts and talents and divine rights. And we maybe should look at doing things that way instead of the way that we're used to, which for the most part is the way men run the world, which is fine because the world needs to keep going. But there is another way that is sorely lacking in the world today, and it is women, it is the feminine. And so we would maybe do well to start learning what that looks like and how we can start to embody that in our lives, because we don't have, if Stephanie is going to say that the scriptures tell us what to do but not how, for the most part they tell the men what to do and how, or not how, and women are just like named a couple of times and that's where it ends. There's no real model of what it looks like to be a godly woman and how to approach life from that space. And so that's kind of what we were talking about and how that's just such a great need. And it kind of hit me that God put this on our table as women, and someone at our table said, is God's watching us and saying, what are they going to do? Do they want a bunch of rules, or are they going to step up and say, okay, we're going to connect to God and be told how to do this? I think God is watching us, and I think God did put this on our plate as women, and I think it's becoming time that we start stepping into what does that look like for women to act in a godly way. in a way with wisdom. Because it might be a little bit different than what we generally think of when we think of, God and structure and the way that the masculine way of doing things. There might be another way that is complementary to it. And so that's what we were discussing. So anyway, I think our general thing was that we should just wait and maybe give it a try and vote later.
Okay, table 8, is that right? Or are you, yeah, you're also, sorry, table 8, there we go.
We're comfortable voting for the document. We wanted to point out with the, oh, is this better? Yes. Okay. We're comfortable, our table is comfortable voting for the document. When one of the tables made the suggestion to edit 1.3, where it says, if there's no home fellowship, the council takes place at a general conference, cutting general. Someone brought up that a general conference is a quote from the Lord's words, and so maybe we shouldn't edit the Lord's words. We're making a suggestion that for line 2, subparagraph 1 of A be switched to A, that says, if the accusations are of a legal, dangerous, abusive, or predatory nature, then proper authorities should be called, inserting first. And that may seem like common sense, and that may be true, but for women at the table, myself included, we have had personal experiences where we feel like that would be good information for someone who's going through that experience to keep in mind, because in moving forward, it can complicate things. So it could be a simple clarification that could solve a lot of future problems. And that was just that on that part, right? Okay. And on number 4, someone answered A, and then on B, it's in the preserving the restoration is the quote. I think it's also in top 10, I can't remember. But the other concerns would be that it takes 7 women to reinstate the man that were from the 12 who voted to take away the certificate. Is that accurate? Okay, so we just wanted to fill in that blank. I'm not sure how we're doing this logistically, if we're all going to take a vote on if we're sustaining it, or if we're going to go through and do the modifications that were suggested. But there were some opinions on when people were offering suggestions, if we would vote for or against it. So maybe that can be addressed later after, but did I cover everything? Okay, that's us.
I think there is no one at table 9, table 10, and I think table 11, so I think table 12. Wait, that went fast. I thought I had more time.
I want to thank the women of our table. We had some really good discussions, and all of you. This is difficult stuff to process, and many of us have been through a lot and have some real life experience that we were processing during this time. As a table, as we talked about it, we felt like if this document was provisional or if it was non-binding, we would be very comfortable voting for it. But if it is binding, or if we just don't feel like we've had enough time to work with it. We brought up some specific things that if they were workshopped a little more or reworded a little bit, might work a little bit better, and I'd like to share those at this time. The first one is the part about home fellowships. We were persuaded by Whitney's words that having the man choose his fellowship was problematic, and also some fellowships are very small, and that choosing the fellowships probably needs to be workshopped a little bit more. What one process came up is that if the women could testify that they have fellowship with the man, that might be something to consider, particularly if it's difficult to come up with 12 women. I'd also be willing to consider Stephanie's suggestion of having a bank of women willing to serve. But the home fellowship question, we feel, needs a little more work on the wording in order to be what we would want it to be. This is stepping back a little bit, but I felt like the dichotomy we were presented with in the beginning. Stephanie, you said you like when people disagree with you. I disagree with the idea that we either need to agree with this or we have a poisoned heart is an unfair dichotomy. I think this is something we should wrestle with and work with good hearts and good intents without the accusations of each other if we have some troubles with it. So I want to step back from that kind of language a little bit. We wanted to process a little bit more the principle of anonymity of the women. If women vote to take a man's priesthood away, we definitely take a certificate away. We definitely think that their names should be given to him. But because these are women that know a man's daily walk, and we know that many men have your phone numbers and will call, and jury tampering is a real issue, we felt like we should process the anonymity a little bit, at least have a little bit of space to figure that out. Just because witness tampering is a serious thing that was brought up in our Zoom meetings. The men being only witnesses for men, this came up in two reasons. One woman expressed how having the support of her husband, particularly during a difficult trial, was important to her, and how that is an important part of a husband's role, and so keeping him totally out of it didn't feel appropriate, that having her husband's support was important. Another one that came up is that the new principle that's been introduced, that a man can ask someone to be his advocate, to liaison with the counsel with him and choosing like times and dates and witnesses and stuff, that in order for that to work, that would have to be a woman that the man would choose, because that would be a man participating who wasn't just a witness if a man chose another man to be his advocate with the Women's Council. So in order to follow the principle of a man can only be a witness, then a man must choose a woman to be his advocate. And it sounds by the wording and how it would actually work out in realpolitik is it would need to be a woman who wasn't a sitting member of the council, but was acting as an advocate for the man. And we think that needs to be processed a little bit more, how that would work out in a women's council. We really like the principle of individual autonomy, that a women's council dealing with an individual situation with an individual man needs to have some leeway in exactly how some of these principles are applied and work in his particular situation. We brought up the situation of every effort should be made for a man to face his accuser. We dealt with a situation where there was a restraining order in place, and that wouldn't be wise. And in the secular courts, that particular facing of the accuser is known to cause a lot of trauma for victims, and we would like to have the leeway in there to find individual situations with individual places to try and mitigate any further trauma in specific situations. It's a good principle, but there might be more exceptions than the wording leaves open for there to be. Let's see, what else did we have? Another principle that came up is if a court votes to not take a man's certificate, should they meet again? Should they meet again with new accusations? New accusations felt a lot more comfortable to us than meeting the same accusations again. And we just want to, we want to vote for this in a way that, there was one other principle. As many women on the council as being neutral as possible, that is a beautiful principle that we brought up in the Zoom meetings is hard in real life, because if anyone feels like calling a women's council is hard. It is a tremendous amount of work, hours and hours of free labor and emotional toil. And no women or group of women are going to do that unless they believe a council is merited. So there may be some women on the council who already feel that a council is merited, but they should try to find the other women who are willing to
to be as neutral as possible. But there will probably be some that already have opinions on it. Because of the requirement of unanimity is a high requirement, and getting, even if you've got like 1 or 2 women that believe the council's there, to getting the other 10 to agree with you is such a high bar. I think that we can still have a fair and honest dealing with that caveat. We also were considering the path back for men after a women's council. As far as I know, no man's had his certificate removed and been able to come back. And I think that that's something that we should consider prayerfully. I would love to have every man who's had his certificate revoked to be able to come back in full fellowship. And I think that we would love to have these councils be less traumatic, both on the men and the women, so that the path back is a little easier, so that we can, the process of repentance is real, and we can bear testimony of it because we've seen it in our own lives, and we've seen men come back from having their priesthood certificate revoked. And that is our hope, and I would like to put something like that in any document that we accepted, some sort of resolution that is our goal and the work of our hearts. So thank you.
Excuse me. Our table is good with the majority. We have a few suggestions or changes or clarifications. One was already said, the language of general conference is in T&C, so we don't want that changed. Law trumps the council. If homie's in prison, we don't need to worry about a council. So if he's practicing in prison, that's between him and God, not us. Number, let's see, 2C3, the language of council members should not be removed or replaced except for an emergency. A few changes. Legal system allows councilwomen to be adjusted, and if neutrality is questioned, like if you know someone's gunning for a predetermined outcome, the ability for the council to vote to remove that council person and supplement with one of the alternates or somebody else. And then petitioning to the return certificate, we came to the same conclusion. The language is the man. That feels straightforward. It's got to be him, no one else on his behalf. And then for having the same 12 women in the event of like death or moving out of the fellowship or whatever, the ability to call other women to get 7 of 12. And then the men are only to participate as witnesses. We suggested replacing with the language from Preserving the Restoration, which is men can be witnesses, but only women are allowed to vote, which leaves some leeway for other roles that they may possibly take. Never a vote, but that does leave a little bit of power up to the fellowship to determine other roles that they may be comfortable with the man taking. And then as for home fellowship, that the home fellowship is responsible for hosting, running, organizing, but if it doesn't contain 12 women willing or able to serve on that, then that fellowship can extend into, the region that would possibly also contain women acquainted with the daily walk or enough to jump in on that. And then just an overarching concept that we talked about is to think about the document Sarah put together as sort of the Constitution, and then whatever we come up with here as a Bill of Rights. So the Constitution is sort of the founding principles. That's where we get that's the scriptures, whatever. And then the Bill of Rights just specifies a little bit more clearly so that we have more of a standard operating procedure to be accountable to it and one another, and when outside or internal issues arise, that's the Bill of Rights, you go to that, you know, whatever we're calling this eventually, whatever we come up with, that's what we are accountable to, and can go through that checklist and say, yes, these are all fine, so it can stand, or if it has not been followed, then its legitimacy is, can be called into question and, you know, further steps taken. So with those caveats, those ideas, those language changes, we are good with this document.